My name is Kendall, and at 29, I never imagined my life would play out like this. 3 years ago, I was living in my truck after losing my job, my apartment, and my dignity. During a holiday dinner, my family actually laughed when I mentioned looking for temporary IT work. Now, after countless sacrifices and endless hustle, I own a beautiful renovated craftsman home. Last week, my family showed up unannounced after years of silence. My parents walked through my home, nodded approvingly, and then said the words that left me speechless. This house would be perfect for Jake and his family. If you are watching this, drop a comment telling me where you are from, and subscribe if you want to hear how I handled this outrageous situation. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland, where our family seemed normal enough from the outside. My parents, Richard and Marie, had me first, and then my brother Jake came along 4 years later. Jake was always referred to as the miracle baby because my mom had experienced some medical complications that made them believe they could not have more children. From the moment he arrived, the family dynamic shifted in ways I was too young to fully comprehend. As the years passed, the signs of favoritism became harder to ignore. When I made honor roll, my parents would nod and say, "That is what we expect." When Jake brought home even a B-, they would celebrate with dinner at his favorite restaurant. I focused on academics and technology, spending my weekends tinkering with computers while Jake was the natural athlete who became the high school quarterback. Each of his touchdowns was commemorated with family photos and framed newspaper clippings. My programming competition trophies collected dust in a box in the garage. I worked part-time throughout high school at the local electronics store, saving every dollar I could. By graduation, I had earned a partial scholarship to the State University for computer science. My parents contributed exactly $500 toward my education, explaining that I needed to learn financial responsibility and that nothing builds character like working your way through college. Those 4 years stretched into 5 as I balanced multiple jobs with my course load. Some semesters I would take fewer credits because I simply could not afford full-time tuition. I worked at the campus IT help desk during weekdays, delivered pizzas on evenings, and took weekend shifts at a warehouse. I lived on ramen, coffee, and determination, often sleeping just 4 hours a night. Meanwhile, Jake attended the same university 2 years behind me. Our parents fully funded his business degree despite his decidedly average grades. When he complained about his intro to accounting class being too early in the morning, they paid for a private tutor rather than suggesting he adjust his schedule. The contrast between our college experiences could not have been more stark. For his high school graduation, Jake received a brand new Ford Mustang. For mine, I got a used laptop that was already 2 generations out of date. I told myself I was being petty for noticing these differences. After all, family is family, and I was certain that eventually my hard work would be acknowledged. After college, I secured an entry-level IT position at a small company. The pay was modest, but it was enough for me to share an apartment with 2 roommates in a decent part of town. I was proud of myself for landing a job in my field when many of my classmates were still searching. My parents mentioned it once, then immediately pivoted to discussing Jake's internship at a prestigious marketing firm that his business professor had arranged for him. The Christmas before everything fell apart, we gathered at my parents' house for what would be the last normal family holiday. Jake had just graduated, and my parents presented him with a check large enough to cover the down payment on a condo near downtown. I received a sweater and a $50 gift card to an office supply store. I swallowed my disappointment and told myself that my parents were just more financially comfortable now than they had been when I graduated. I remember watching Jake open his envelope, his eyes widening at the check inside. "This is incredible," he said, genuinely moved. "I cannot believe you did this for me." My mother hugged him tightly. "We want you to have a good start in life, honey." I sat there holding my gift card, wondering if they had forgotten all the times I had asked for help with tuition, or the semester I nearly dropped out because I could not afford both rent and books. But I pushed those feelings down. I smiled and congratulated Jake, determined to maintain the family peace. The last normal dinner we had together was a few months after that Christmas. Jake announced that he was starting his own marketing consultancy with a substantial investment from our parents. They beamed with pride as he outlined his business plan, complete with projections that seemed wildly optimistic to me. To Jake's success, my father toasted, raising his glass. The first millionaire in the family. I raised my glass too, ignoring the familiar sting of being an afterthought. I had recently received a small promotion at work, but there was no toast for that accomplishment. No acknowledgement of the long hours I had put in to move up even one rung on the corporate ladder. Looking back, I wish I had recognized the pattern more clearly. I wish I had prepared myself better for what was coming, but I was still caught in the myth that family would always be there when it really mattered. I had no idea how wrong I was, or how soon I would find out. The economy started showing warning signs about 6 months into my IT job. Tech companies began announcing hiring freezes, then layoffs. My company had secured several contracts with larger corporations that were now cutting costs aggressively. In a meeting that lasted less than 10 minutes, my manager informed me and 6 other employees that the company was right-sizing and our positions were being eliminated immediately. I received 2 weeks of severance pay and an awkward handshake. Security watched as I packed my desk into a cardboard box. By noon, my key card no longer worked, and I was officially unemployed. The timing could not have been worse. The job market was suddenly flooded with experienced IT professionals from larger companies, all competing for a dwindling number of openings. I applied for 47 positions in the first month, ranging from IT support to data entry. I got 3 interviews and 0 offers. To complicate matters further, both of my roommates announced they were moving to different cities. One had secured a job in Seattle, the other was moving back home to Chicago until the job market improved. Our lease was ending, and there was no way I could afford the apartment on my own. My savings were depleting rapidly. Each morning, I would wake up and check my bank account, watching the number grow smaller as rent, food, and utilities consumed what little cushion I had managed to build. After 2 months of unemployment, I was down to my last $1,000, barely enough for 1 more month of expenses. With reluctance and wounded pride, I called my parents to ask for help. I had never asked them for money before, not even during the toughest times in college. But this was different. This was temporary. I just needed enough to cover rent until I found another job. "Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I would not ask if it was not important. I just need a small loan to cover rent while I continue my job search. I promise I will pay you back as soon as I am employed again." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Kendall," my father finally responded, his voice stern, "you are 26 years old. When I was your age, I was supporting a family, not asking for handouts. This is exactly why we always taught you about financial responsibility." "This is not a handout," I protested. "It is a loan. I just need help for a month or 2 until I can find another job." "Maybe you should have saved more when you were working," he suggested, "or found a less expensive apartment." My mother took the phone. "Honey, why do not you just move back home for a while? We have the space." At first, it seemed like a reasonable solution. I could save money, focus on my job search, and get back on my feet. But when I arrived at their house with my belongings, I discovered that moving home meant living in the unfinished garage. My old bedroom had been converted into a home office, and the guest room was kept ready for Jake's occasional visits with his girlfriends. "The garage is perfectly livable," my mother insisted, showing me the air mattress they had set up between boxes of Christmas decorations and old sporting equipment. "We will run an extension cord out here so you can have a lamp and charge your phone." I stood there, looking at the concrete floor and exposed insulation, and realized how low I had fallen in their estimation. I was the family failure, relegated to the garage while my brother could still claim a proper bedroom whenever he visited. "I appreciate the offer," I said, trying to maintain my dignity, "but I think I will figure something else out." I left without unpacking, my pride damaged but still intact. Back at my apartment, I found an eviction notice taped to my door. I had exactly 14 days to vacate the premises. Those 2 weeks were a blur of desperation. I sold nearly everything I owned on online marketplaces. My television, my desk, my bookshelf, even my bed frame. I kept only what would fit in my truck: some clothes, my laptop, essential documents, and a few sentimental items I could not bear to part with. I rented the smallest storage unit I could find for the remaining items and moved out before the sheriff could enforce the eviction. The first night I slept in my 2008 Toyota Tacoma was surreal. I parked in a Walmart lot, reclined the driver's seat as far as it would go, and covered myself with a thin blanket I had kept from my apartment. I stared at the roof of my truck cab, unable to process how quickly my life had unraveled. Over the next few days, I developed a system. I purchased a gym membership for shower access. The public library became my office, where I could use the free Wi-Fi to continue my job search. I found the safest parking lots to sleep in and learned which fast food restaurants would let me sit for hours with a single cup of coffee. About 3 months into this new homeless reality, my mother called to invite me to dinner. Despite everything, I felt a spark of hope. Perhaps they had reconsidered. Perhaps they understood now that I was genuinely struggling and needed support. I showered carefully at the gym, put on my cleanest clothes, and drove to my parents' house with cautious optimism. Jake was there too, along with my parents. The table was set nicely, and for a brief moment, it felt like old times. Then my father raised his glass, a toast to our homeless son who has decided to join us for dinner tonight. The table erupted in laughter. I sat frozen, my water glass halfway to my lips. "Dad, that is not funny," I said quietly. "Oh, lighten up," Jake chimed in. "It is just a joke. You are not really homeless. You are just between apartments." "I have been living in my truck for 3 months," I said. My mother patted my hand. "Well, we did offer you the garage. You were too proud to accept it. Speaking of which, I saw the cutest little dog houses on sale. One might fit in your truck bed for extra space." More laughter. I looked around the table at their amused faces, unable to comprehend how they could find humor in my situation. The conversation moved on. Jake proudly passed around his new business cards, embossed with a sleek logo. My mother showed photos of Jake's condo renovation on her phone. My father discussed an upcoming vacation they were planning. All while I sat there, acutely aware that I would be returning to a cramped truck seat when dinner was over. When I mentioned looking for temporary IT work until I could find something permanent, my father scoffed. "Maybe you should rethink your career path," he suggested. "Technology is too competitive." Jake was smart to go into marketing. There is always a need for that. Jake nodded sagely, as if dispensing wisdom from his vast 6 months of business experience. I left dinner early, claiming I had an early morning appointment. In reality, I could not bear another minute of their casual cruelty. I sat in my truck around the corner from their house and cried for the first time since losing my job. Not just for my current situation, but for the painful realization that my family would not be the safety net I had always assumed they would be. That night, parked behind a grocery store, I made a vow to myself. I would never ask my family for help again. I would rebuild my life on my own terms, and someday, they would regret treating me this way. Living in a truck quickly teaches you what actual necessities are. My daily routine became a careful orchestration of basic survival and job hunting. I would wake up at 5:30 in the morning, before most people were up and about, to brush my teeth and wash my face in a gas station bathroom. By 6, I would be at the gym for a shower and a quick workout to maintain some sense of normality. By 8, I would be at the library, using their computers to search job boards and send applications. To earn enough for gas and food, I signed up for a food delivery app. Between job applications, I would deliver meals to people in comfortable homes, catching glimpses of the life I had lost. Some days I would make enough for a hot meal. Other days, I survived on granola bars and water. The rejection emails kept coming. "We have decided to proceed with other candidates. Your qualifications are impressive, but we have found someone who is a better fit. We will keep your resume on file." Each one chipped away at my already fragile confidence. As summer turned to fall, the nights in the truck grew colder. My heater had been working intermittently, and in early October, it stopped altogether. I started sleeping in layers of clothing, wrapping myself in an emergency thermal blanket I had bought at a sporting goods store. Each exhale created a small cloud of vapor in the increasingly frigid truck cab. The cold took its toll. I developed a persistent cough that evolved into full-blown pneumonia. Without health insurance, I could not afford to see a doctor. I self-medicated with over-the-counter medicines, downing cough syrup and acetaminophen while shivering through fevered nights. Just when I thought things could not get worse, I nearly landed an IT support position at a local company. The interviews had gone well, and the hiring manager seemed impressed with my experience. Then, for reasons I still do not understand, they called my parents as a reference. Perhaps I had listed them on an old resume and forgotten to update my contact information. Whatever the reason, the result was devastating. I received an email the next day informing me that they were moving forward with other candidates. Weeks later, I ran into someone who worked at that company who told me in confidence that my father had told the hiring manager I was unreliable and lazy and that they would regret hiring me. That was the final betrayal. I changed my phone number and email address that day. I cut all ties with my family, unable to comprehend why they would actively sabotage my attempts to rebuild my life. With winter approaching and my health deteriorating, I became desperate. I applied for a night security position at an office building downtown. The pay was minimal, but it offered something crucial: shelter during the coldest hours of the night. I would work from 10 at night until 6 in the morning, sitting at a desk in a heated lobby, occasionally making rounds through the empty building. I continued to sleep in my truck during the day, parked in various lots around the city. I was constantly exhausted, coughing through my shifts, surviving on energy drinks and determination. It was during one of these night shifts that I met Miguel, another security guard who rotated through various buildings in the company's portfolio. He noticed my persistent cough and the dark circles under my eyes. "You look like hell, man," he said bluntly during a shift change. "No offense." "I am fine," I insisted, suppressing another cough. Miguel studied me for a moment. "Where are you staying these days?" I hesitated, embarrassment burning in my chest. "I am between places right now." "You are living in your car, are not you?" he asked, not unkindly. "Too tired to maintain the facade." I nodded. "Look," Miguel said, "my wife would kill me if I did not offer. We have a couch. It is nothing fancy, but it is yours for a few nights if you need to get warm and really sleep." I was stunned by his generosity, a stark contrast to my own family's coldness. At first, I declined, my pride still raw from my family's rejection. But when temperatures dropped below freezing that week and my cough worsened to the point where I could barely complete my rounds, I finally accepted. Miguel and his wife, Elena, lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment with their teenage daughter. Their couch was old but comfortable, and for the first time in months, I slept through the night, warm and safe. Elena insisted on feeding me, making extra portions of hearty stews and casseroles. She even washed my clothes while I slept, a kindness that brought me to tears when I discovered my clean, folded shirts. "You would do the same for someone else," she said simply when I tried to thank her. Through Miguel's cousin, I secured a temporary data entry position that paid weekly. With my first paycheck, I rented a room at an extended stay motel for 7 days. After months of sleeping in my truck, that first night in a real bed with a private shower felt like unimaginable luxury. I stood under the hot water for nearly half an hour, letting it wash away months of struggle and humiliation. These small victories began to restore my faith in humanity, if not in my own family. Miguel and Elena had shown me more compassion as virtual strangers than my parents and brother had in our entire relationship. They invited me for Sunday dinners, never making me feel like a charity case, but treating me like extended family. That year, I spent Thanksgiving with Miguel's extended family instead of my own. Their modest apartment was crowded with relatives, the table overflowing with traditional dishes alongside Elena's Mexican specialties. I sat among these people who had no obligation to care about me yet had welcomed me without hesitation. The contrast between their warmth and my own family's rejection was painful but illuminating. For the first time, I began to understand that family is not always defined by blood, and that genuine kindness often comes from unexpected sources. As I helped Elena wash dishes after dinner, she noticed my thoughtful silence. "You are missing your family?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "I am realizing I might be better off without them." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Sometimes the family we choose is better than the family we are born into. That night, back in my motel room, I felt something I had not experienced in months: hope. not just for financial stability or a permanent roof over my head, but for building a life surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not who they expected me to be. The road ahead would still be difficult, but I was no longer alone on the journey. And for the moment, that was enough to keep moving forward. The data entry job was mind-numbing but stable. Each day, I would sit at a computer terminal, inputting information from paper forms into a database. The office was windowless and lit with fluorescent lights that hummed constantly, but it was warm, and the paycheck arrived, like clockwork, every Friday. After about 6 weeks, the supervisor, a no-nonsense woman named Barbara, called me into her tiny office. "Kendall," she said, looking over her reading glasses at me, "I have noticed you finish your assignments faster than anyone else in the department." I tensed, worried that this observation would somehow work against me, perhaps result in more work for the same pay. "Thank you," I said cautiously. "I try to be efficient." "The IT department is short-staffed," she continued. "They mentioned needing someone to help with basic troubleshooting. I told them about your background. They would like you to come by after your shift today." That afternoon, I met with the IT manager, a harried-looking man named Paul who seemed perpetually behind on his workload. The department consisted of just him and one junior technician trying to support an office of over 100 employees. "Can you fix a printer jam? Reset a password? Explain to Carol in accounting for the 15th time how to attach a document to an email?" he asked rapid fire. "Yes to all of the above," I replied. "Great. You can start tomorrow. Same hourly rate. But if you prove yourself, we can talk about making this permanent." I maintained my night security job on weekends, working 7 days a week. Between the two positions, I was putting in nearly 70 hours weekly. The exhaustion was constant, my body perpetually sore, my mind always slightly foggy from lack of proper rest. But my bank account was growing, and that made every aching muscle worthwhile. My routine was relentless. Weekdays, data entry from 8 to 4, IT support from 4 to 7, a quick meal, then sleep. Weekends, security from 10 at night until 6 in the morning, sleep during the day, then repeat. I moved from the weekly rate motel to a slightly more affordable monthly arrangement, a tiny room with just enough space for a twin bed and a small desk. During a particularly busy day in the IT department, I met Sarah, a senior programmer who worked on the company's proprietary software. She had come down to complain about network slowdowns affecting her team's productivity. "The problem is the router configuration," I explained after running some diagnostics. "It is prioritizing traffic incorrectly." She raised an eyebrow. "And you know this, how?" "Computer science degree," I said simply. Before data entry and security, I was in IT at another company. Sarah studied me for a moment. "Why are you working data entry if you have a CS degree?" I gave her the abbreviated version of my story, leaving out the family details, but explaining the layoff and difficult job market. "Come have lunch with me tomorrow," she said. "I want to hear more about your background." That lunch changed everything. Sarah was not just a programmer, but a team lead working on modernizing the company's outdated systems. As I explained my education and previous experience, her eyes lit up with interest. "We are switching from Java to Python for some of our newer modules," she said. "Have you worked with Python?" "Some in college," I admitted, "but it has been a while." She pushed her lunch aside and pulled out a laptop. "Let me show you what we are working on." For the next half hour, she walked me through their current project. When I asked a few questions that highlighted inefficiencies in their approach, she smiled. "I have got documentation I can lend you," she offered. "If you are interested in getting up to speed, I would be happy to help." For the next month, Sarah and I met during lunch breaks. She would bring materials for me to study, and I would spend my minimal free time devouring programming tutorials and documentation. On particularly slow security shifts, I would practice coding on my laptop, building small projects to sharpen my skills. The opportunity to prove myself came unexpectedly. The inventory tracking system was causing headaches for the warehouse team, with frequent crashes and data inconsistencies. During a particularly frustrated rant from the warehouse manager, I mentioned that I might be able to help. "You?" he scoffed. "The data entry guy? Give me access to the system over the weekend," I proposed. If I cannot improve it, no harm done. Reluctantly, he agreed. I spent the entire weekend between security rounds working on a solution, creating a more efficient database query structure, and fixing several bugs in the code. By Monday morning, I had a working prototype that was noticeably faster and more stable. The warehouse manager was impressed enough to mention it to upper management. By the end of the week, I was called into a meeting with the IT director and Sarah. "We would like to offer you a junior developer position," the director said without preamble. "Sarah speaks highly of your abilities, and the inventory system improvements were substantial." The salary they offered was nearly double what I was making in data entry. It was not quite what I had earned at my previous IT job, but it was enough to start rebuilding my life in earnest. With this new financial stability, I moved from the extended stay motel to a small but decent studio apartment. It was nothing fancy, just 400 square feet with a kitchenette and a bathroom that barely fit a shower stall, but it was mine. The first night, I sat on the floor of the empty space, keys in hand, and allowed myself a moment of pure satisfaction. I developed a strict financial discipline that would have impressed even the most frugal financial advisor. 50% of my income went to necessities: rent, utilities, food, and transportation. 40% went directly to savings and investments, untouched and accumulating. The remaining 10% was my quality of life fund, allowing for small luxuries like an occasional meal out or a new book. I continued working the security job on weekends for 6 more months, building my savings aggressively. Every morning, I updated a spreadsheet tracking my progress toward financial independence. I researched investment strategies during lunch breaks, opening accounts and making small, calculated investments in index funds and stable stocks. After 14 months as a junior developer, I was promoted to a full developer position with another significant salary increase. I celebrated by taking Miguel, Elena, and Sarah out to dinner, the first time I had spent money on anything truly unnecessary in nearly 2 years. "To new beginnings," Miguel toasted, raising his glass. "And to the people who helped make them possible," I added, genuinely grateful for these friends who had become my chosen family. With my increased income, I accelerated my homeownership timeline. I had initially calculated that I would need 3 more years to save for a down payment, but at my current rate, I could be ready in 18 months. I studied the housing market obsessively, learning about foreclosures, short sales, and fixer-uppers that might allow me to enter the market sooner. I also continued my professional development, taking online courses to expand my programming skills and building a portfolio of freelance projects on weekends after I finally quit the security job. Each new skill increased my value as a developer, and each completed project brought me closer to my goals. When my savings finally reached my target for a down payment, 6 months ahead of schedule, I celebrated with a quiet dinner with Sarah, Miguel, and Elena. They had witnessed every step of my journey from homelessness to homeownership preparation, offering encouragement when the workload seemed impossible and perspective when I became too focused on the numbers in my accounts. "I could not have done this without you all," I told them honestly. "Nonsense," Sarah replied. "You did the work. We just provided the occasional meal and pep talk." "Family," Elena said simply, raising her glass. "This is what family does." I began the house hunting process with clear parameters. A structurally sound home in need of cosmetic updates in an up-and-coming neighborhood. I was pre-approved for a mortgage, my credit score having recovered and strengthened through careful financial management. Each weekend, I viewed properties, taking detailed notes and comparing potential renovation costs. The transformation from homeless to homeowner candidate had taken just over 2 years of relentless work and sacrifice. There were moments when the finish line seemed impossibly distant, nights when exhaustion made me question if it was all worth it. But each morning, I would look at my financial tracker, see the progress I had made, and find the strength to continue for one more day. What had started as a desperate need for shelter had evolved into something more profound, a determination to create not just a home, but a testament to resilience. Every dollar saved was a small victory over the circumstances and people who had once made me feel worthless. Every step forward was proof that I did not need the family that had abandoned me when I needed them most. What I did not know then was that my journey was about to come full circle in ways I could never have anticipated. After 3 months of intensive house hunting, I found it. A foreclosed craftsman home in a neighborhood that was showing early signs of revitalization. The house had been vacant for over a year, the previous owners having walked away when they could no longer afford the mortgage. The bank was motivated to sell, and the listing price reflected both the property's condition and their desire for a quick close. The first time I walked through the front door, I could see past the peeling wallpaper and stained carpet to what the house could become. The bones were good: hardwood floors hidden under worn carpet, solid plaster walls beneath chipping paint, a floor plan that flowed naturally from room to room. A home inspector confirmed my assessment. The foundation, roof, and major systems were all in reasonable condition. The problems were mostly cosmetic, things I could fix with time and effort. I submitted an offer $20,000 below asking price, citing the necessary repairs. After some back and forth, we settled just $5,000 above my initial offer. With 20% down from my savings, my mortgage payment would be less than what many people paid for rent in far less desirable neighborhoods. The closing process was a blur of paperwork and anxiety. Each signature brought me closer to a goal that had once seemed impossible. When the keys were finally handed over, I sat in my truck outside the house for nearly an hour, staring at the facade that was now mine, unable to fully process how far I had come. Moving in was anticlimactic. All my possessions fit in the back of my truck: a mattress, my laptop, some clothes, and a few kitchen essentials. I slept on the floor that first night, surrounded by empty rooms full of potential. Despite the sparse conditions, I felt a sense of accomplishment that surpassed any other achievement in my life. The next morning, I woke up early and walked through each room, making detailed lists of needed repairs and improvements. I created a renovation timeline based on urgency and budget, prioritizing the kitchen and bathroom before moving on to living spaces. Every evening after work, and each weekend became dedicated to transformation, both of the house and myself. I learned home renovation the same way I had rebuilt my life, systematically, one step at a time. YouTube became my instructor for everything from plumbing repairs to drywall installation. I made mistakes, sometimes costly ones that required starting over, but each error taught me something valuable. The kitchen came first. I tore out dated cabinets and replaced them with ones I found on clearance at a home improvement store. I installed new countertops myself after watching countless tutorial videos. When the plumbing for the sink proved too complicated, I hired a professional but watched carefully so I could handle similar issues in the future. The bathroom was next, with new fixtures and tile that I installed over a 3-weekend marathon of cursing and backaches. The transformation was remarkable, turning a dingy, outdated space into something that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. 6 months into homeownership, my career took another leap forward. A growing tech startup recruited me for a senior developer position with a substantial salary increase. The additional income accelerated my renovation timeline, allowing me to hire professionals for the more complex work, while I focused on the details that would make the house truly mine. Slowly, the empty rooms filled with carefully selected furniture, most of it purchased second-hand and refinished by hand. I planted a vegetable garden in the backyard, turning bare soil into rows of tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. I installed a security system with cameras that I could monitor from my phone, a precaution born from months of vulnerability. As the house transformed, so did the neighborhood. A new coffee shop opened 2 blocks away. A couple purchased the foreclosed property across the street and began their own renovation. Property values ticked upward as more young professionals discovered the area's potential. After 18 months of work, the house was almost unrecognizable from the neglected property I had purchased. Fresh paint in warm, inviting colors, refinished hardwood floors that gleamed in the sunlight, a kitchen that combined functionality with style, a peaceful backyard retreat with a small deck I had built myself. The before and after photos told the story of both the house and my life, from abandoned and undervalued to lovingly restored and full of promise. The property value had increased significantly, but the real worth was in what the home represented: security, accomplishment, and independence. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I would think about my family. I had maintained complete radio silence for almost 3 years. Occasionally, I would check social media for updates, keeping emotional distance while satisfying natural curiosity. Jake's business appeared to be struggling based on increasingly desperate promotional posts. My parents' profiles showed the same carefully curated images of perfect family life. Though I noticed Jake appeared in fewer photos recently. I considered reaching out, then decided against it. The memory of their laughter while I was homeless was still too raw. The betrayal of my father sabotaging a job opportunity still unforgivable. Whatever was happening in their lives, it was no longer my concern. Instead, I focused on building connections with people who had proven their worth through actions rather than blood ties. Sarah became a close friend beyond our professional relationship, often bringing dinner on evenings when I was lost in a renovation project. Miguel and Elena were regular visitors, their daughter occasionally helping me plant new flowers in the garden beds. When the house was finally complete, I hosted a small housewarming party. Just a dozen people, all of whom had supported me through the darkest periods or had become friends during my recovery. Miguel and Elena were the guests of honor, the first to arrive and the last to leave. "This place," Miguel said, gesturing around the living room with its comfortable furniture and warm lighting, "it is not just a house, it is a testament to hard work." I agreed. "No," he corrected, "to resilience. Anyone can work hard. Not everyone can fall so far and climb back higher than before." That night, after everyone had left, I sat alone in my living room, savoring the silence and security of my own space. For the first time in years, I felt not just financially stable but emotionally whole. I had created new traditions in this home. Sunday meal prep for the week ahead, movie nights with friends, quiet mornings with coffee in the garden. I belonged somewhere again, not as someone's son or brother, roles that had brought more pain than joy, but as the creator of my own sanctuary. The home was more than a financial investment or a roof over my head. It was physical proof that I had survived, rebuilt, and thrived, despite everything. What I did not know then was that my peaceful new life was about to be disrupted by the very people who had once cast me aside. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in a meeting. An unknown number that I would normally ignore, but something made me step out to answer it. "Kendall?" My mother's voice was instantly recognizable despite the years of silence. "Please do not hang up." I said nothing, my throat suddenly tight. "We miss you so much," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I know things were difficult before, but we are family. Can we please talk?" Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her for coffee that weekend. A public place, I reasoned, would allow me to leave easily if things went poorly. She looked older when I saw her, more lines around her eyes, her hair with more gray than I remembered. When she spotted me, her face lit up with what appeared to be genuine joy. "You look wonderful," she said, embracing me before I could step back. "Healthy, happy." We sat with our coffees, the conversation initially awkward and stilted. She asked about my work, nodding with what seemed like real interest as I described my position in vague terms. She spoke of neighbors and distant relatives, careful small talk that avoided the elephants in the room, their treatment of me, the years of silence, Jake. Eventually, she ventured into more delicate territory. "Things have been challenging for our family lately," she said, stirring her coffee unnecessarily. "Your father's business has had some setbacks. And Jake, well, Jake has had a difficult time." She did not elaborate, and I did not ask. But by the end of our meeting, I had somehow agreed to dinner with all of them the following week. A proper conversation, she insisted, to reconnect as a family. The restaurant was neutral territory, an Italian place downtown that none of us had visited before. My father looked much the same, perhaps a bit heavier, his handshake firmer than necessary as if asserting dominance even now. Jake seemed diminished somehow, his confident smile replaced by something more subdued. After ordering, my father cleared his throat. "I suppose I should say that I'm sorry for whatever you think we did wrong," he began, his non-apology hanging in the air between us. Before I could respond, Jake jumped in. "My business failed," he said bluntly. Went bankrupt 6 months ago. Lost everything, including investors' money, Dad and Mom's money. I nodded, unsure what response was expected. Then my wife left, Jake continued, staring into his water glass. Took the kids most of the time. I get them every other weekend and Wednesday nights. The picture was becoming clearer. I am sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I took no pleasure in his suffering. Jake and the children have been staying with us, my mother explained. Our house is really too small for such an arrangement, but family helps family through difficult times. My father studied me across the table. So what about you? What have you been up to during your absence? I gave them the sanitized version of my journey, emphasizing my current stability while glossing over the worst moments of homelessness. I mentioned my job in tech, but not my title or salary. And then, perhaps unwisely, I mentioned my house. You own a home? My father's eyebrows shot up. In this market, I bought a foreclosure and renovated it, I explained. It was a lot of work, but it turned out well. How wonderful, my mother said, her eyes lighting up with interest. We would love to see it. Against my better judgment, I agreed to have them over that weekend. It would be a brief visit, I told myself, a way to finally close this chapter with them, seeing that I had succeeded without their help. They arrived 20 minutes early on Saturday, not just my parents, but Jake as well, with his 2 children in tow. I had not been expecting the kids, having assumed they would be with their mother that weekend. Hope you do not mind, Jake said, ushering his 6- and 8-year-old through my front door. They were excited to see their uncle's house. I had barely spoken 10 words to these children in their lives, making the excited uncle narrative suspicious at best. But I welcomed them politely, offering the cookies and juice I had hastily grabbed from the kitchen. My mother moved through the house like a real estate appraiser, examining every room with unusual interest. 3 bedrooms? She asked, opening doors without waiting for permission. 2 bedrooms and an office, I corrected, following behind her. The master suite is lovely, she commented, running her hand over the new quilt on my bed. So much space for just one person. My father was equally invasive, measuring rooms with his eyes, commenting on the square footage and the lot size. Good investment, he noted. Property values in this area are increasing steadily. Jake's children ran through the house, claiming bedrooms and spaces as if they were moving in. I want this room, the older one shouted, jumping on the bed in my guest room. No, this one is mine, the younger countered, racing into my office and spinning in my desk chair. I looked to Jake to control his children, but he was in the kitchen, opening cabinets and checking the refrigerator contents. This is a lovely home, Kendall, my mother said, returning to the living room. It would be perfect for a family. I like it for myself, I replied, a note of caution in my voice. My father joined us, nodding thoughtfully. It is a lot of house for a single person, especially the yard. Must be hard to maintain on your own. An uncomfortable realization was dawning on me. This was not a casual visit to see my home. This was an assessment. Jake confirmed my suspicions moments later. So listen, he began, his children still racing around the house. We have been talking about my situation, and we think we have come up with a perfect solution. My mother nodded encouragingly. It makes so much sense when you think about it. What makes sense? I asked, though I already knew the answer. This house, Jake said, gesturing around. It is perfect for me and the kids. 3 bedrooms, nice yard, good school district. Much better than cramming into Mom and Dad's spare room. I stared at him. This is my house. Well, yes, my father interjected, but you are single. You do not need all this space. Jake has a family to raise. You could sell it to him, my mother suggested. At a family discount, of course. Or maybe you could move back home for a while. Let Jake and the kids use the house until he gets back on his feet. I felt like I had stepped into an alternate reality. Let me understand, I said slowly. You want me to give up my home, that I worked for years to afford and spent 18 months renovating with my own hands, so that Jake can live here? Family helps family, my father said firmly. After all, we did raising you, putting you through college. You paid for Jake's education, I corrected. I worked my way through school. This is not just about you anymore, my mother added. Think of the children. They need stability. I am sorry about Jake's situation, I said, struggling to maintain my composure, but this is my home. I am not selling it or moving out. The atmosphere shifted instantly. My father's face darkened with familiar disappointment. My mother's eyes filled with tears, the emotional manipulation I recognized from childhood. After everything we have done for you, my father began. What exactly have you done for me? I interrupted, years of suppressed anger finally surfacing. When I was homeless, living in my truck, you laughed at me, made jokes about doghouses. That was just teasing, my mother protested weakly. When I was desperate for work, Dad sabotaged a job opportunity by telling them I was lazy and unreliable, I continued. For 3 years, you made no attempt to contact me. Now you show up, see that I have something valuable, and want to take it for Jake. Again, Jake at least had the decency to look embarrassed. The children had stopped running, sensing the tension in the room. I think you all should leave, I said quietly. They departed in stony silence, my father making ominous comments about selfish choices and family obligation. I closed the door behind them with shaking hands, equal parts furious and incredulous at their audacity. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The calls began the next day. First my mother, then my father, then even Jake, all with variations on the same theme. I was selfish. The house was wasted on one person. Family should come first. The guilt trips escalated to veiled threats about what family deserved and what they were entitled to. A week after their visit, Jake showed up on my doorstep with 2 suitcases. What are you doing? I asked, blocking the doorway. You said I could stay for a couple of days, he replied, attempting to step past me. Until I figure things out. I never said that, I responded firmly. Well, I am here now, he insisted. Just for 2 nights, tops. The kids are with their mom this week. Against my better judgment, I allowed him in, setting clear boundaries. 2 nights maximum, gone by Wednesday morning. I would sleep with my bedroom door locked. The next day, I returned from work to find not just Jake but my parents as well, and several more suitcases and boxes in my living room. What is going on? I demanded. Jake mentioned you were letting him stay, my mother said cheerfully, arranging family photos on my mantel. We thought we would help him get settled. I told him 2 nights, I said. And I never agreed to all of this. My father waved dismissively. He needs more than 2 days to get back on his feet. Be reasonable, Kendall. With growing horror, I realized they were attempting to establish Jake's residency in my home, making it legally complicated to remove him later. The additional belongings, the family photos, the mail I noticed Jake had already redirected to my address, all pointed to a calculated plan. That night, a full-blown confrontation erupted in my living room. What began as my firm request for them to leave escalated into a shouting match about family obligations, past slights, and present entitlements. You owe us, my father thundered. After everything we have done, I owe you nothing, I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You all need to leave right now. We are not going anywhere, Jake asserted. I have tenant rights now. You are not a tenant, I countered. You have no lease, no rental agreement, and you have paid no rent. Good luck proving that, my father said smugly. It will be your word against the 3 of us. My mother began crying, talking about her grandchildren needing stability and how cruel I was being. Jake settled onto my couch, arms folded, a challenge in his eyes. I grabbed my keys and wallet, walking toward the door. Where are you going? Jake called after me. If you are still here when I get back, I said calmly, you will regret it. My father laughed. Running away again? Some things never change. I closed the door behind me, their victorious expressions the last thing I saw before stepping into the night. From the parking lot of a coffee shop 2 blocks away, I called the police. I reported that I had unauthorized people in my home who were refusing to leave. I explained the situation clearly. Family members attempting to establish residence without permission, no rental agreement, no invitation beyond a 2-day stay for one person. When I returned to the house, I was accompanied by 2 officers. The look of shock on my family's faces when they opened the door was something I will never forget. They had clearly believed I was bluffing, that I would never take such a definitive stand against them. These people are trespassing in my home, I explained to the officers. I asked them to leave, and they refused. My father immediately tried to take control of the situation. "This is a family matter, officers. My son invited my other son to stay here while he gets back on his feet. I invited him for 2 nights maximum," I clarified. "That was yesterday. Now they are all here, moving in furniture and belongings without my permission." "Do you own this property?" one officer asked me. I provided my identification and mortgage documentation that I kept in a fire safe. "Is there a rental agreement?" the officer asked. "Absolutely not," I replied. "No rent has been paid, no agreement signed." My father tried a different approach. "Jake has established residency here. You cannot just throw him out without proper eviction proceedings." The officer turned to Jake. "How long have you been staying here?" "Since," Jake hesitated, looking to our father for guidance. "He moved some things in yesterday," I provided. "Less than 36 hours ago." After examining my documentation and confirming I was the sole owner, the officers informed my family that they had no legal right to remain in the home against my wishes. "You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings," the officer told them. "After that, you will be removed if necessary." My father's face flushed with anger. "You would do this to your own family? Have us thrown out by police? The same family that laughed when I was homeless?" I replied calmly. "The same family that has not spoken to me in 3 years until they wanted something? Yes, I would." Jake began gathering his things, muttering threats under his breath. "You will regret this," he said as he passed me. "I promise you that." My mother alternated between tears and guilt trips as she collected the family photos she had arranged. "How will I explain to the grandchildren that their uncle hates them?" she sobbed dramatically. "You are dead to me," my father declared while carrying boxes to their car. "No son of mine would do this." I stood silently by the door, unmoved by these familiar emotional tactics. The officers remained until all 3 family members and their belongings were out of the house. As soon as they drove away, I called a locksmith who arrived within the hour to change every lock. That night, alone in my secure home, I experienced a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that they were gone, anger at their entitled behavior, guilt that had been programmed into me since childhood, grief for the family relationship I had never really had. The next morning, I contacted a therapist who specialized in family trauma. It was time to process not just the recent invasion, but the lifetime of conditional love and favoritism that had preceded it. For months, I worked through my feelings about my family, gradually replacing guilt with understanding and anger with acceptance. The harassment did not stop immediately. There were angry phone calls, tearful voicemails, and even social media posts painting me as the villain. Extended family members I barely knew reached out to express their disappointment in my selfish actions. Friends from childhood, still in contact with my parents, sent messages urging me to reconcile. I responded with a cease and desist letter, professionally drafted by an attorney. The letter outlined the facts of the situation and requested no further contact. It was not meant as a legal threat, so much as a clear boundary. This behavior would not be tolerated, and I was serious about maintaining my distance. Gradually, the calls and messages stopped. My family, faced with my unshakable resolve, finally accepted that their manipulation tactics would no longer work on me. The silence between us returned, but this time it was my choice, a protective barrier rather than an imposed exile. In the quiet that followed, I continued to build my life on my own terms. My career flourished as I took on more challenging projects and expanded my skills. My home became truly mine again, a sanctuary rather than a battleground. The friendship circle that had supported me through my darkest times continued to grow, creating a chosen family based on mutual respect and genuine care. Miguel and Elena became regular fixtures at my Sunday dinners, bringing their daughter and eventually their extended family. Sarah introduced me to her brother, who became a close friend and occasional renovation partner when I decided to update my backyard with a proper deck. These relationships, built on a foundation of shared experiences and reciprocal support, taught me what genuine connection should feel like. Looking back on my journey from homelessness to homeowner, I realized that the greatest lesson was not about financial security or career success. It was about self-worth and the courage to demand better treatment than I had been conditioned to accept. It was about recognizing that forgiveness does not require reconciliation, and that sometimes the healthiest choice is to walk away from those who cannot or will not respect your boundaries. Family is often defined by blood, but the truest definition comes from actions. Who shows up when you are struggling, who celebrates your successes without envy, who respects your autonomy, even when they disagree with your choices. By that definition, Miguel, Elena, Sarah, and the other friends who stood by me were more family than the people who shared my last name. The house that my biological family tried to claim represents more than just financial investment or physical shelter. It is a testament to resilience, a physical reminder that I survived not just homelessness, but the deeper wound of family betrayal. Each room I renovated with my own hands, each system I improved through patient learning, reflects a parallel healing in my sense of self-worth and capability. I still occasionally wonder about my parents and Jake, not with longing or regret, but with a detached curiosity about what might have been different in our relationship. I hope they have found peace with their choices, just as I have found peace with mine. Forgiveness, for me, was not about letting them back into my life, but about releasing myself from the burden of their expectations and disappointments. If there is one thing I would share with anyone facing similar family dynamics, it is this. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to expect respect. And if those boundaries are repeatedly violated, you are allowed to walk away, even from blood relatives. Your worth is not determined by your family's ability to recognize it. Today, my home is filled with warmth, laughter, and genuine connections. The people who gather around my table are there by choice, not obligation. The love that fills these rooms is freely given, without conditions or expectations. This, I have learned, is what home truly means. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who felt entitled to your success? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to choose yourself sometimes. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, the family you choose can be stronger than the family you are born into.